Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today I am once again joined by both Andrea and Natalie. Uh, we got great feedback on the last episode. By that I mean nobody said anything, but I just wanted to have you both back on again because I just enjoyed our chat last week, so I'm excited to get into it. I think Aurora did post something about it, so shout out to you, Aurora. One person did say something. I feel like every time I always love when we got such great feedback. Anyways, not important. Let's move on. Before we get into today's topic, which is troubleshooting client adherence, I mean, just a quick intro. It'll be for both coaches and clients. I think it'll be super helpful. Natalie, I know this was a topic you mentioned wanting to dig into. Like, why do you think this is important for us to chat about?
It's important because adherence is important because we know that in order to make, any real sustainable change, we've got to be adherent to the plan. So what's needed is consistency. To achieve consistency, we need adherence to a plan, right? And whether or not the plan needs to change, we'll get into that, of course. But obviously, it's important for coaches because I know that there are coaches listening right now that are like, cheering us on, like, yes, what is the secret? What's the key here? Like, I have clients that, just are not following their plans. Like, how do I kind of rectify this? But likewise, there are also probably clients listening that, are struggling. We've coached and coach clients through this before. That's just part of coaching. And it's part of the process, both client side and coach side. So it's important to talk about.
Absolutely. As a coach, it'll help you help your clients get better results. As a client or just someone coaching yourself, it'll help create awareness around why you might not be progressing. And I think that's kind of like one of the biggest underlying themes here is just creating awareness around like perceived adherence to the plan versus real adherence, like where that is an issue versus do we actually need to adjust the plan? Because I think it's quite easy as a coach to just adjust the plan, and the person still is making progress and really struggle to know whether it is actually just I don't have the right plan for this person or it is an adherence issue. And that's like one of the most important aspects of coaching. So it'll be a fun one to get into. Before we get into that, any personal updates? Andrea, anything new from you to fill us in on?
No, not really. I'm doing the same old thing with building. Schedule's getting a little busier just because summer's wrapping up, and that means school is starting. School starts in like, I don't know, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's coming up really soon. So my kids are shifting into their school year stuff. So evenings are getting busy, but it's really doesn't change a whole lot for me. I just do the same thing in a different spot a couple nights a week.
You so to be rid of your kids.
No, I feel like it flew by. Um, Having kids is awesome, Jeremiah. I feel like you have such a negative perception of parenthood.
I,
It really is great. But it is busy. So
Fair enough. I don't have a negative perception of parenthood. I have loved being a dog parent. I'm just giving you a hard time. Well, fair enough. Natalie, anything new going on with you to fill us in on?
No, just living that prep life. So we're doing cardio twice a day now, just because it helps to break it up, but that's the thing. So things are really heating up there. I said this on our call earlier, but it feels like the first, I think as of Sunday, I'll be wrapping up 12 weeks. So I think
Mhm.
I'm living week 12 at this point, and it really feels like the first 11 weeks were like a buy-in to get to this point because that flew by, really wasn't very hard. And then, now is the point where I've got some good energy days, some less than good energy days. Um, some really good training days, some not as good training days. So, but it took this long to get to this point. So I'm really thankful and grateful for that. And I've been having this chat with a lot of my clients lately who I have one in a photo shoot prep right now and a few other clients dieting. And we're, we're pushing and we're getting to those sticky spots where it's like, hey, we're really in this right now. And it actually is really fun to be there with them. Cause like I just haven't seriously dieted in so long, but like it feels really, it's just really fun to be there with them. I'm like, dude, trust me, I know. Like me too, and be able to just relate. And I've been telling them and myself things like, hey, like the hard days count twice. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's really true. Like, think of how proud you'll be like when you get through that hard day. And then every time you have a really good day, like I had a really good couple training days this week already, and I'm so much more grateful for them. Whereas that was just like my life for 3 years. Like almost every day was a great training day because I felt so good and I was so fueled. So they always say like you need the lows to appreciate the highs. And I feel like periods of dieting like this just kind of recalibrate those things for you. Recalibrate the gratitude meter, if you will. Um, and I am definitely reminding myself like this is what I signed up for. And like let's go. So I'm ready.
The Stoic philosophers of old would have agreed with you, Natalie. The lows are very important for the highs. We don't enjoy the highs without the lows. I love it. I do think though that like dieting at the same time as clients is always so helpful.
It is.
Even like I do feel people are more excited about it when you are actually in there with them.
Mhm.
It's so cool to be able to like be sharing a lot of what you're doing, and even like I think someone's perception of it, it is a lot easier to kind of shift someone's perception of it from like, oh, this sucks to like, oh, this is fun when they can see like in the moment like how excited you are about the things that you're doing, or like, oh, Natalie's doing like cardio twice a day and she's just having fun with it, right? It's not like life sucks now or anything of the sort, you know.
I I go back and forth with like how much I want to share. Like first and foremost, it's my first like contest prep, so I want to document things for me, like so that I have this record of what I'm doing. And also, I do think there are practical applications there, and I like leading by example. But I it's like I've had hard moments too. So what I don't want to do is like it has been really fun and like it has been a pretty smooth ride and I'm enjoying it. But like that's not to say there haven't been difficult moments. And so
Mhm.
I don't want to like brush those under the carpet and say like, oh, it's never hard or anything like that. Cause like toxic positivity sort of
Yeah,
like because like I do want to be very real. And I do like as things progress, I want to be very transparent about the fact that like I don't plan on sustaining these results. And like I'm starting to enter that realm of like this is not healthy.
right.
And I want to be very transparent and clear about that. And like some of this is like I don't expect clients to like take it this far or dig to these depths. But I think it is like if you're sharing journeys like this, you do have a responsibility to acknowledge some of the lows
Yeah.
because I don't think it's responsible to like give a false sense of like, hey, like this is just all sunshine and rainbows all day, every day. Because like it's not. But
Unless you,
finding that balance is hard though. Because like I am a pretty positive person and I do really enjoy this stuff and like I am excited about it. But that's not to say like there aren't or won't be struggles.
yeah, no, I think that's very well put. There will for sure be times where you don't feel like doing it, or it might not seem enjoyable, or it's just really not enjoyable. But I think like the whole like the mindset, the way you're able to work through those things is also extremely helpful for others to hear and learn from. Okay, so I mean, I feel this somewhat ties into the adherence side of things because I do feel like our mindset, our perception of it is such a big issue. Is there a certain place you would like to start this conversation, Natalie?
Um, I guess it might be a good idea to talk about how we define adherence. You touched on this earlier in terms of like perceived adherence versus
Hmm.
like our actual adherence, like our definition and like how we're perceiving that. Because
Yeah.
I think we've found, coaching a lot of clients, our definition of adherence is not they don't always match.
Hmm.
So I think first things first is when we're troubleshooting, like, hey, why is this plan not going the way I kind of think it should? Or maybe the client's like, why am I not making the progress I think I should? Or the coach is like, why is this client not making the progress I feel like they should be making? Okay, are we having an adherence issue? And how do we address this with the client? Like first and foremost, I think it might be important to get on the same page about like what does adherence actually look like?
What's
With
a
with adherence, it does seem like there are two main things that come up from the client's perspective. And one is like, oh yeah, I crushed it, but really like things look pretty off. And then the other is, I know what I need to do. I just keep not doing it. And there's frustration there with their own lack of follow through.
It's a really good, that's a really good way to approach this, actually. I was struggling to know how to start this, but I think that's perfect. And that's a great shout, Andrea, because there's kind of the first step we have to move someone through, which is, do we understand even what adherence looks like? And you're saying like there's the one individual who is aware, hey, we're not adhering. But I posted about this the other day. Like I've had, and this is super common, not just her, but like I had a client talk who was like, I crushed it this week and I'm not sure why I didn't make progress. Then I looked at it, like I broke this down, I like color coded it, and it was like, okay, so in 7 days, we have one day where we didn't track anything. And then we basically had one day where we were within plus or minus 100 of our calorie targets. We hit our protein goal like 3 times, and we were just basically, we were all over the place, right? We weren't adhering well. Where understanding, like, I would say for us to put a number on it, I think like starting out, hey, we're within plus or minus, let's say 100 of our calorie goal. I think is a pretty good. And there's like we get in the macros as well, but like we have that in place. And I mean, there's a lot of variables we get into here, but also like from a food selection perspective, like there's not untracked bites, licks, and tastes. We've measured our foods. And if we are having meals out, I mean, that's a huge variable here, I would say, as a whole. Like when we're talking fat loss, at most like 1 to 2 meals out per week. And even then, they need to be things that are like very extremely simple. And we're probably overestimating calories, if anything else, if we're not requesting like, hey, no butter or oil, like the basic mustard salad type thing. But I think the first, yes, like just getting someone on track with what does adherence actually look like? And is our definition of this the same? This is something that does seem to take quite a while to make click with some clients. Um, Anything else y'all think that needs to be clarified there as far as like what does adherence actually mean?
Yes, because I think that in so many ways, a lot of people think that just by hiring a coach or working with a coach, that's what it's going to take to see change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the same thing as adherence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's why there can often be this almost like dissonance between like, yeah, like I'm crushing it. And, we're kind of looking at the data and we're like, whoa, what do you mean you're crushing it? Like, I'm like seeing all these holes here. Like, we didn't track here. We didn't do this. Like, are we really doing the thing? But I think it's like, because I'm working with a coach, because I am now thinking about these things, whereas maybe before I wasn't, because now I'm giving thought and intention on doing something. And it's like, that's true. Like you are doing something, which means there probably is some sort of net improvement. But that doesn't necessarily, net improvement doesn't necessarily equate to like following the plan.
I would say, especially for a lot of the clientele that we work with who are a little bit more advanced, or again, a lot of times it is coaches. I find I have this conversation the most with coaches who work with more beginner clients. And typically, like that, someone who is a lot newer to this, maybe there's a lot more body fat to lose. It can just be like, hey, we basically improve our habits and we make a lot of progress. Now, I think it's easy for the coach to take that and think, okay, this should still work for me. When again, the level to which we have to be dialed in does just improve. I really like to look at it as like, let's break this down as a percentage. How many days of this week did we truly nail the plan? So let's say again, like within like plus or minus 10 of our protein, plus or minus 10 of our carb, plus or minus 5 of our fat. Again, this is going to vary by individual, but let's speak to someone who's like trying to go from lean to ripped. How many days did we have like that? And a lot of times it'll be like, oh shit, 1, 0. And that's where I think first we have to look at like, okay, the plan isn't working. How many weeks of this process can we truly say like we nailed all the variables, we truly nailed the plan? Even from like an outside of, like I was having a conversation with another client this week where he was frustrated. It was like, I just like felt awful this week. I don't know why I felt so bad. I was like, okay, like let's talk through all the variables. Did we nail the plan? Did we do all these things? And like specifically in his training, he was feeling terrible. It was like performance was way down. It was like, I'm not sure why. worked through all these things. And then a couple days later, he was like, so I gotta let you know, actually, I've been adding in, like, I've been running for like an hour every day. It's like, well, this is important for us to know as well, right? More isn't necessarily better. And this is for sure adds up why, because we were doing a very low carb approach at the time as well. And it's like, okay, it for sure adds up why we're feeling this way. Um, okay, but we're clear on, are we adhering to the plan or not? I think that is the first step.
And I
Then,
do like the systems that we have in place. We have some without spilling all of our coaching secrets. We have some like tracking sheets that we use, and there what I do like about our systems is there is a visual representation there of adherence.
right.
So you can kind of like your post the other day that you kind of highlighted, and what you were talking through a little earlier. There is like a visual aid that you can use to talk through, like, hey, like really just looking at this, did we really crush it? Like, are we crushing it? And we're seeing like all kinds of holes and gaps here in the data. I find that that's just really helpful, especially for visual learners.
No, 100%. And from a coaching perspective as well, it makes it so easy for us to right away see, like, okay, are we actually doing the thing or not? So we've worked through step one. We understand what adherence is. We're on the same page there. Then, okay, said client is aware now that we're not adhering to the plan. What are you typically looking to next, Andrea, as far as like what's our next step from here? Where do we go? Or like what do you want to ask?
I really like Natalie's like education awareness agency kind of checklist there to figure out why, like what is going on.
The old
Um,
EAA. Oh yeah.
yeah. Um, so first figuring out is this is this something that they don't understand, or is this like a situation that they're in that they're just kind of choosing like this is what I want in the moment, and just sort of getting to the root cause issue there. And I would say the most common reasons that somebody ends up going off plan would be either emotional eating, social events, or hunger. And once we can figure out like okay, or there could be other things that pop up, but those are definitely the most common. Once we've identified like what's going on, do you understand like why this is happening, or kind of going back to what I said about either I know what to do and I'm just not doing it, or I feel like I'm doing everything well and it's just I'm not seeing any progress. Then we can kind of dig a layer deeper underneath that once we identify that.
Okay. Did you just, is this like this EAA framework, Natalie? Is this like a new thing or is this something I've never heard you say this before, I don't think, but I like
Really,
it.
because I
It
did a
was in a
social
recent
post.
Instagram post. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I don't think I follow
thanks for
you.
following.
Okay.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, I think the most important thing is we have to get to the root of like why the client isn't adhering.
Yeah.
And again, like Andrea kind of introduced, is it an education issue? Like, do they just not understand? Like, like I had someone who, like, oh, well, like I did a really long hike, so I just, I ate more because I was more active. Is something that, but like might not occur to them, like that isn't necessarily going to help our goal, or like,
Hmm.
just an example, but something like that where they legit just don't know. And again, as coaches, that's our job to educate, right? And make sure that we fill that knowledge gap there. Um, because
I
that,
think I think there too, it is very helpful is to interrupt to if you feel like the person just doesn't understand, like we've had this conversation several times, the person just doesn't understand, just making sure you're actually ending that with like, does that make sense? Do we understand? Do you understand like why this is important? A lot of times it is easy to just like first, I mean, it's easy to just skip over that and just like, hey, we need to do this. But if a person doesn't understand the why behind it, sometimes like compliance will be much harder. But then actually just getting that confirmation from them is so helpful in making sure that this isn't the issue because a lot of times it'll still be like, that didn't really click with me. Or if you just like tell it to them rather than it's a conversation around it, it can kind of just go over people's heads. So making sure we're very intentional about those things, I think is important as well. Go on.
mean, I think a good example of this could be like, tracking when eating out. Like, oh, I didn't know I needed to account for extra like oil, butter,
Yeah.
or like I literally just didn't know. I wasn't trying to go off course here. It didn't occur to me, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So like,
Well,
Uh,
not Natalie's oh, you're
oh,
good
there she
now.
is. Oh, no, she's gone again.
Once again, it's frozen. But I think that is a very good example. Things like tracking when you go ahead. You'll let you continue.
am I back?
Yeah, you were
Yeah.
talking about tracking while eating out, and the clients might not be aware that they needed to do so.
Right. I was just saying, like, we work with clients in of various levels, and experience levels. And there is a learning curve. And there's a lot that we do learn by making mistakes or like
Mhm.
oversights or something like that. So, I mean, I do think one of the things I know the three of us try very hard to do is when we're laying out the plan, it's like, and here's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
But there are always like little things here or there that, maybe the client just didn't know. And like, again, this like tracking while eating out is an example. Like, oh, it didn't occur to me. I didn't know. Like, okay. Um, so, I think again, to take it back to the initial point, getting clear on the why and like the awareness could actually probably be like tied into the educational piece as well. Like I'm just not aware that I'm doing it. Like, so that again, our job is a little bit to be a detective too. And then the last one, agency, is like Andrea pointed out, like I know what to do. I just am not doing it. So I think that's really a good starting point is like we've got to figure out the root. Because if we know the root, then that determines which course of action we're going to take in terms of troubleshooting.
So how do we, like, when we're trying to figure out what is the specific issue here that's causing us to not stick to this? Again, we confirm the client understands this an issue. How are you kind of trying to unravel that thread? Either of you have thoughts on that. Like, is there typically like a, hey, I'm kind of asking this, or like, where are we looking to start to unravel that? I know that a lot of times where I will start is if there's, I mean, a lot of times there is just a like, well, you mentioned like all these meals out, or I can see it in your food logs quite easily, and I'll bring that up. There will sometimes be situations where it's like, it's not extremely clear to me right out of the gate why this person like food's all over the place or like we're definitely not adhering, but it's not clear to me like what the issue is. How do you start figuring out like because I think it is important for us to yes get clear on what is the actual issue here we need to fix, not just hey try harder to hit your macros next week, but like what's the actual issue we need to solve? How do you guys get clear on figuring out what that is?
Just
I like,
asking questions beyond our check-ins. A lot of it does come out in check-ins because we can like we're always asking how many meals out did you have this week? And so that becomes obvious if that's part of the issue, even if they're not really realizing that that is slowing them down. We're also asking, were you adherent this week? If no, what happened? And that clarifies most issues because like we talked about before, like most clients know, oh well, I was pretty good through most of the day, and then I was really stressed, and I ate the rest of my kids' animal
I
crackers or
hate my
something.
kids.
animal
Yeah.
crackers are an excellent choice, by the way.
Yeah.
Frosted animal crackers.
They're so good.
Yeah, and I think as a coach, that's quite important as well. That's something that's been extremely helpful for us is not just like, hey, how adherent were we? But okay, what's the like what is the answer that I'm trying to get from that question? And then like following up with, okay, so based on that, like if we weren't adherent, fill me in on like what the deviations were,
Hmm.
rather than us like having to have as much back and forth around. Yes, it helps us solve the problem or like start to solve the problem quicker.
I think
Okay.
like we used to ask like on a scale of 1 to 10 or like 1 to 5 or whatever, like how adherent were you? But like we would always have to ask so many more questions
Right.
because
Hmm.
again, like kind of to our original point, how we started out this conversation, people have very different ideas of like, I would say I was 8 out of 10. Like, what does
Mhm.
that even mean? Like, and is your definition of 8 out of 10 the same as mine? Like, probably not. but like how do you really quantify that? So, having that question in there, like, hey, were there any deviations this weekend? What were they? And like again, asking for information about like any meals out. Again, that's not to say you can't have meals out. I just want some information on them. Because like blowout meal at Cheesecake Factory is very different than like, oh yeah, I like went and bought a bagel and weighed it at home and ate it like I'm gonna do today.
Well,
No,
and also like a lot of times things will come out there, but sometimes we'll see like were there any deviations and they mark no, and then they're actually getting like a 60-70% on all of their are we within 10 grams or 5 grams of your macros? And so that's
Mhm.
another avenue to go down. Sometimes most of those will be a yes, they are within 10 grams, but we're still not seeing things moving. And so then we can pull up food logs and see, like, oh, this thing is weighed in cups. This thing is like one potato instead of measured in grams. Like, basically, our check in process is guiding us to where we need to look.
yeah, that's exactly
Or
the
my
route I was
favorite
gonna
is
go with
like a
that.
like a like a 0.03 tablespoon of something. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you
You guys don't have
I
those?
I had a
mean,
tenth of a piece of pizza.
yeah, like how do you eyeball that? Like my eyes aren't that sharp for sure.
And
But I think
honest,
that gives us like an avenue then to, like like, oh, okay, well, I see that we had all these meals out, yet we're still like, we didn't hit these marks or whatever. And then asking like, hey, well, like what happened there? And a lot of times it'll come down to like, oh, this situation, like I was really in a rush and like I didn't plan and okay, bingo. Like that's where we need to go. Like we didn't plan. And like basically how can we remedy this situation so that it doesn't happen again? So basically, through all of this data and these questions, like where's the lesson? Is this a correction we can make for next time? Is there something that we can do differently or set ourselves up better?
and typically this will get us to just working through again like the questions in the check-in, and then if nothing stands out there, looking at food logs honestly will typically get us to the point where okay, it's pretty easy to identify what the issue is. I from there typically if I'm still not clear, I'm like, okay, I mean, I don't nothing stands out to me in food logs. I'll ask about like, okay, are there any untracked like oils, butters, yada yada yada. Is there anything that I am missing? Because on paper this looks quite good. Am I missing anything that could be hurting us here? A lot of times from there, I'll have people just, okay, send me over pictures of your food for like the next 3 to 5 days. And I just want to compare this to food logs, make sure there's nothing that we're missing. And I mean, a lot of times things will just start to move and it's like, yeah, it looks good. And then I'll ask like what was different here versus the last week. And then well, I was doing this and this and this. Um, but okay, we're in that place where again, this kind of leads us to the conversation around, okay, here's how we can like, here's where the issue's coming from. Here's how we might start addressing this. Is there anything, do you think that covers the awareness side of this well, Natalie, with this trademark framework?
I think I think so because again, it's a lot of back and forth, like
Mhm.
us asking questions and I think through that usually awareness levels are raised, right? Like again, maybe something like, oh, I just like I didn't know or like I just didn't think it was that big a deal.
Yeah.
Like, cool. Well, that's why we're having this conversation because and the reality is maybe for some clients it's not that big a deal. Maybe they are able to get away with a little bit more, but sadly, that's not the reality for most.
And that's an important conversation as well, because I have some clients like, think of my guy Cam who's crushing it. And like he'll get more flexible relatively frequently. Like I'll have like some drinks most weekends and like he has a lot going on, but we're progressing perfectly at the exact rate we want to. And also like that side of things is important to him. So I'm good with it, right? It's not necessarily like a problem I feel I need to fix, but I do think that again, especially when we're talking to like someone who wants to kind of take their physique to the next level, it is also important to understand that the first time you get there, it'll probably almost feel unfair in how dialed in you have to be to make it happen with how accurately we have to track things. Like the little things do add up a lot more than we may have thought. I think just like helping people understand that that's normal as well. Like I wish I made the rules because I make it way easier too. Like I think that's very important from a coaching perspective because it's not like a it is quite a drastic change, I think, from like how most of us start tracking our food and start tracking macros, where it's like we said, like our perception of like I 95, 100% is actually like maybe 60%. So it's just understanding that as well, I think is such a big part of this. In terms of agency, talk us through like how do we then like what does this even look like in terms of developing agency or like what are we just clarify this side of things for me.
Agency is like taking ownership, taking agency. I know my clients have heard me say things like taking radical responsibility.
Hmm.
Like, hey, okay, so it's not an education issue. Like, we understand what the problem is, like why I'm not sticking to this plan. Um, it's not an awareness issue, like because we've covered education. Now I'm aware I'm doing it. And so that leaves us with like, okay, so now we're choosing not to do the thing.
Hmm.
And I will stipulate like that is consciously at this point choosing not to do the thing.
Hmm.
And so why is that? And that is going to likely lead us down a road of revisiting what the goal is and why the goal is important. Because if the goal is important, we need to take responsibility for our actions because no one can do this for you. And like we started the podcast saying, what is going to get you results is consistency. And that's like adherence to the plan, right? So if we're not going to do the thing, we're not going to get the results. So like what is a breakdown? And this is a really interesting one too, because I think there are some like kind of nuances here where like I've had clients who have been really dialed in and then they kind of go through like a little bit of a rebellious period. And I remember like I did this once, like way back in like the earlier parts of my journey. I remember like I had a couple moments of like, I resent that I have to be this dialed in. I'm gonna actually, ironically, I think I did overdo it on animal crackers that night to like tie that together. I remember this very vividly. Went ham on some animal crackers. Um, but you know what I mean? Like these little bouts of rebellion of like,
Yeah.
oh, like I don't know if you guys can relate at any point in your journey, but this was like earlier on where like I had already had success. Like I figured out the macros thing. I like know how this stuff works. And then I just like part of it was just the environment I was in, like the food environment and the people that I was with. And it was just like, well, why do I have to be the different one? Why? And I know a lot of people can relate to that, right? Why am I the one that like has to eat differently to get the results that I want? And I just had this like kind of moment of rebellion and like, buried my face in some animal crackers. And thankfully I did get that out of my system. And I was like, well, that didn't make me feel better. Uh, but in any case, like that, I feel like that happens sometimes. And that's an interesting one to talk through. And that's one where I could very much relate. So,
I think
I'm
it's
all
normal, especially somebody's first maintenance phase after dieting, to kind of push the boundaries and see what they can get away with.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
most people can't get away with a ton. Some
Yeah.
unicorns can be a little more flexible, but most need to be way more dialed in than they would think
Yeah.
to maintain the physique that they want. Like Jeremiah said, I think it was last week, like the rent's higher with a physique that you probably have the goal of maintaining, and you just kind of have to go through the like pushing the boundaries and see
Yeah.
what you can get away with, learn that it's not as much as you want to be able to get away with, and then dial it back.
I
So I
think
would say,
we're sorry.
especially if it's like quote unquote Instagram like worthier like Instagram physiques that are inspiring you for sure for like that demographic, you have to be like quiet. Because I think we can all probably think of clients we work with where it's like there's like this person and like maybe every couple of months they're like, oh, she still like looks so much leaner than me or like so much more jacked. And it's like, man, we gotta like stay very dialed in and like this is what we want even at maintenance. I think that is yes, really important to accept. I didn't have anything of a value really to add there though, Natalie. Go ahead.
I think I lost my train of thought there.
That
Um,
were,
but I think what I was gonna say is I think the three of us are very big on like constantly revisiting the goal, which I think is important. Like, is this still the goal?
hmm,
Because at any point, it is well within the client's right to say, I don't want to pay that rent. Like, okay, like this has been a learning experience. Like I didn't realize when I started out, we try our best up front to say like, okay, this is where we want to go. This is what's going to be required. But sometimes until the client is in there doing the thing, it's one of those things like, your eyes are bigger than your stomach kind of thing. So it's easy when you start out and you're super motivated and you're like, yeah, yeah, I'm like in it. I can do it, right? And then once it's like, yeah, I want that apartment, right? I can afford it. I'll just like, I'll just make some cuts, elsewhere in my budget, and like I can afford it. And then it's like we start paying for that apartment for a couple months, and it's like, I things are getting a little tight. Like, do I still want this apartment? Is it worth it to me? And it's not my job, it's not our jobs to convince the client that like they need to pursue this specific goal,
right.
right? So that's when we're constantly revisiting, like, is this still worth it to you? If it is, we got to dial in adherence. If it's not, okay, cool. Then we really can dial back the plan and adjust the plan and get you adherent to that plan. So, revisiting that, like that constantly, like, is this still what you want? Like, because a lot of people don't know until they get in there and start getting their hands dirty. And that's okay, because again, that's an education and awareness issue, right? You
Hmm.
don't know what it's like to live that life until you get into that apartment.
Yeah, and I think at this point, I mean, we've worked through, okay, this person is aware of the thing. And a lot of times, like where this would come up is, okay, where we have awareness around this and it keeps happening, right? We say, like, hey, every week, every check-in, it's like, oh, I know I wasn't on my game last week, but this week I'm going to get more dialed in. Then this is where I think when we're, because this is super common. Okay, the person's aware of it, they're frustrated with themselves, like, I don't know why I can't get it together, yada, yada, yada. Then I think this is where then, like, we have to be okay with accepting, like, a big part of it is oftentimes an organization issue for clients who are stuck in this. If we've also reestablished, like, okay, this is still the goal, I think people look to, it's still like a motivation, it's still something willpower related, which honestly, I also think it's very easy to just look for hacks and hacks and hacks in terms of like, how can I make this easier? Where there are times where it's like, dude, I have nothing else to give you except for we just have to decide to do it or not do it if this is still what we want to do. But I think people do underestimate the little things like, hey, you never meal prep. Every week it's a stress issue. Your life got super busy and we couldn't stay on plan. Like, why would this week possibly be different? Rather than expecting your life to change or your personality to change, what external things can we control and change to make it easier for us to be successful? Like, I think the book Atomic Habits is so good for this. Like, from a coaching perspective, I think Atomic Habits is one of the most helpful books that I have read because it takes it outside of just the like, do I feel like doing this or not? Which there will be times, of course, where we don't feel like doing it, and we'll still have to. But again, when we are in those moments where, okay, I don't feel like doing it, how can we still make this the path of least resistance, or how can we make it easier? And the little thing is like, am I prepping ahead? Do I have like my training sessions scheduled in? Do I have like a specific time for these things? Like all those little bit, all these little things, like a lot of times are the next step in making it so much easier for us. Even like from a coaching perspective, talking through more like X's and O's, I find a lot of times if it's like, let's say a client is just really struggling with snacking, something that like typically thinking like a more beginner client, I'm really typically looking to, okay, rather than like, hey, just don't do that, take that away. Can I like get them to fill up on something lower calorie first, right? So like, okay, we really struggle with like snacking on our kids' food when we're prepping their like lunches and we do this at like 3 p.m. Okay, cool. Can we like eat this big ass whatever yogurt bowl at like 2 p.m. or same thing with like snacking at night? That's a very common one to do is like, I'm just gonna like I'm gonna have this person eat like a large yogurt bowl with like a bunch of berries and like very filling foods and plenty of protein. I'm not gonna even mention like, hey, don't snack at night. Just like, hey, let's add this in, and that goes away. We push a lot of calories out. I'm kind of just rambling at this
The,
point,
the path
but
of
I
least resistance thing is something I talk about so often because, like you said, so much of this just comes down to planning. And you have to plan for when your worst self, like when you're most tired and stressed and busy, because that's going to happen at some point. And we want the path of least resistance to be following the plan. And if I've got meal prepped food, that's ready to grab and eat, that is the path of least resistance. Whereas if we don't have that ready to go or we don't have any plan, we're just going to grab whatever is easiest. And so if you do have food in the house that isn't conducive to your goals, or you can just order Uber Eats or whatever from your phone, that's going to be the path of least resistance. So you've got to plan for worst case scenario, not best case scenario. And I think so many times with adherence, it's just a busy person who they're they're planning on like, okay, well, I'm gonna be able to just grab and put these meals together whenever it's mealtime and stuff happens. And then now we're busy for 30% of the time that we would have been eating, and now we're only at 70% adherence.
no, that's a very, very common thing with clients. The When it comes to fat loss, the most successful clients are always the most organized. And that's a funny thing. Like I think of even like people getting like ripped for photo shoots. Like it is almost always not the person who perceives themselves to be the busiest, but when you look at their actual schedule and the amount they do, it's like, holy shit, you do so much. You have so much on your plate. But they're also typically able to do that because they're already very organized. And that is really, I think, the crux of what holds so many people back who just like can't make that leap is just unwillingness to like again, like not prepping for like the best case scenario, but prepping for like, okay, realistically, like how have my weeks gone for the last 8, 12 weeks and being okay with, okay, how can I set myself up for more success here? That's such a big aspect of this.
I think you brought up a good point with like the BLTs, so bites, licks, tastes. That's a great example to talk through because it's like, hey, that's where like, okay, are we aware we're doing it? Yes, like we're, we've educated on like why this is, why this is problematic and could be why we're not seeing progress. So hey, let's talk about some strategies. Like maybe we are, like getting like after we clean up the kitchen, we are like getting out of the kitchen ASAP. Right? Just take yourself out of the environment. We're brushing our teeth. We're like popping some gum, like a cup of herbal tea. We're talking through strategies, right? After we've kind of talked through strategies, we've educated, sometimes at that point it does come down to like, all right, you just got to stop. And that's a little bit the end of the line. And we do at that point end at the agency part, right? It's like you just got to stop. And that was kind of what you brought up in Jeremiah in terms of we at some point we have to stop looking for the hacks and the ways to like make this easier. It's like, okay, I've given you every strategy I have, for this. And I mean, ideally, hopefully one of those works, I hope. But sometimes at the end of the day, like we all have things that are hard for us. Your hard might not be my hard, but at the end of the day, like those things that just might be like your hard. That just might be something that like this is just hard for you. And like you just have to do it. And I feel like that's a really unpopular coaching sentiment because I think coaches, I know personally, I always want to have an answer for my clients. I always want to have a solution for my clients. Like that's what I am. I'm a problem solver. I want to fix everyone's problems. I want to get everyone the results that they've always wanted. But at the end of the day, like sometimes it's like you just have to do this. I'm sorry. Like
I
and
think
and I,
that
I'm sorry it's hard.
yeah, but I think that people are sometimes waiting for it to feel not hard. And like
Exactly.
I am definitely gonna nail this, and I am gonna be around the animal crackers and not even want one. and then I'm going to be able to crush it. Where really, like, you have to get to the point where you're around the animal crackers and they look really good, and it would taste really good if you had another one, but you have to stop whenever you still want more.
Like it is okay to be around the animal crackers and experience that friction.
Yeah.
It's okay. I know it's uncomfortable, and I'd prefer not to feel that if I had my choice. But it's like we can't sit around just waiting for everything to be easy. Now, again, the beauty of coaching is that ideally, we have set you up with the most efficient strategy for getting you from point A to point B. So like you're going to go faster and better with help than you would on your own. But that doesn't mean that we can remove all the uncomfortable hard parts. I wish, right? But like, we at some point, like it is still you're just gonna have those things that are hard and you are just gonna have to do it. And through exposure, you do get better at being in those situations, feeling that friction and that discomfort and pushing through and pushing past it.
But as you said, it's a matter of exposure, right? It's if as soon as we feel that, I think friction is a really good way to put it. Like, oh, I love an animal cracker. If it's, well, I'm not there yet, I guess I'm not ready for this yet, so I'm gonna eat some. That's again like, okay, I try to bench. That's like us never lifting weights because we can't lift our goal weight yet. So, okay, well, I'm not ready for that yet. Like we know we're not going to be until we like spend time under tension first. And again, I would urge you to, if animal crackers are, we're really in, like this person is really into animal crackers, probably always going to really want to eat some animal crackers. And that's again, like that's okay. It probably won't ever like go away entirely. And it's also probably a good idea to set your environment up better so we don't have to constantly be exposed to that. But yeah, there's uh, I think that again, the reframe of like, Natalie, you made a great point about like it's not just like always like super easy for us either. But I do think the reframe of like, okay, is this what I want? First of all, no one is like forcing you to go through this. If this is what we want to do, this is very much self-imposed, right? Even your coach isn't going to like be forcing you to diet. Ultimately, like if this is what we want to do, it is 100% something we're choosing. No one else is forcing on us. So might as well just make the best of it. Like it can be really miserable, or you can choose to like see it in the most positive light possible. And then secondly, if our biggest obstacle today is that we have an overabundance of delicious food to eat and we have to not eat some of that, like it's pretty cool that that's the hardest thing we have to do, right? So I think like that reframe can be helpful in terms of like, I said this a lot, but like in the grand scheme of like, if I compare myself to someone who's actually had a hard life, is this actually that hard? You know, like Ben-Hur back in the day, like Natalie, Ben-Hur. I was literally just watching Ben-Hur last night. That
No,
was like my,
not personally, but
you don't know
yes, I
Charlton
know the
Heston?
reference.
Of
Not
course, referring to
personally.
the 1959 Ben-Hur, I think.
Yes, I believe we're the same generation.
I know. I figured it. I figured as much. That was like my favorite. Me and Wyatt loved that movie as kids. Anyways,
That's a great movie,
it is
though.
a
It's a
great movie.
classic.
There's a 2016 version that isn't as good, honestly. But I mean, just think of the trials that he went through. But genuinely thinking of like 100 years ago,
I
200
feel
years
like
ago.
that the Odyssey might be a better
Okay. So we're
metaphor.
to Odysseus on his journey back to Ithaca.
There you go.
We are the trials he went through, the sirens, like all these things, just to the point of that being like comparing this to again like 100 years ago, if I were to tell someone like this is the hard thing I have to do today versus they like actually have to, I don't know, get their water
Yeah.
out of a well and
I I mean I will like jump in here because I feel like I am not that I haven't been jumping in this entire time. I am like living this currently like I am honestly at that point where like I am not stoked to do my cardio, okay? Like it's not the best time. I'm not jazzed about it. So I'm gonna have to go later today and do cardio round two. And it's just, I mean, I'm gonna do it because that's what I'm gonna do, and that's who I am. But I'm also like, okay, really? Like all I have to do is get myself downstairs and put in 20 minutes. Like 20 minutes would fly by if I was just like sitting on my couch scrolling Instagram.
It's very easy to spend
It's
20 minutes thinking about how you don't want to do cardio.
yeah, like it's but
Yeah.
it's like it is literally just 20 minutes. Like in the grand scheme of today and like this week and this life, like is that really the hardest thing? No. Does that mean I'm stoked to do it and I like really want to get down there? Like, well, also no. But it's not that hard. And it's not that deep.
This is something I think Andrea, for the listeners who don't, all of Andrea's different names, is really good at. Is I feel like you don't ever make things a bigger deal than they need to be, and they're just like just start. I think that is truly the biggest obstacle a lot of times.
Yeah, not that I don't ever sit there and go, I would not like to get on that bike right now. But yeah, I mean, I think things are just blown into way bigger of a proportion than they actually need to be a lot of times.
I mean, if that's like our biggest problem is like not wanting to do cardio, that's a very gifted life, you know? And like the biggest thing I have to do is say no to some animal crackers. Like, is life really that bad? And also, thank God those animal crackers aren't going anywhere. Like, I mean, Barnum and Bailey's been in business for what? Those Nabisco Barnum and Bailey's been in business since like the 1800s or something like that.
Yeah, 1868.
Yeah,
Um,
like no scarcity there. Like those are always going to be at the grocery store.
so in terms of to bring it back to this, so we've of course talked a lot about okay, maybe we do just need to be okay with holding a higher standard. How do we go about drawing the line? I see specifically with this when it's like, okay, this person, they're clear that this goal is important to them. We're saying we do want this, but we're still not adhering. How do we draw the line between like, hey, we just need to still hold a higher standard, we need to be better, versus okay, we need to adjust the plan and like maybe simplify it, make it less optimal. That is, I think, one of the hardest things to find as a coach. I'm curious if you guys have like any insights initially that jump out.
I think for me, it's like repeated non-adherence. Like it just like at that point, it's a track record. It's like, hey, I know that this is still what we want, but we're not doing the things that we've outlined to get us there. So we might need to adjust the plan, take a step back. Maybe that means it's going to take a little bit longer. We're still on the path. We're still on the way there. We might need to just take a different road. And as such, it might take us a little bit longer than we wanted, but we know it's like, you say the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result. It's like, how is us just showing up every single week trying to do the plan but not doing the plan? Like, that's not going to get us anywhere. And over time, the danger here is that over time, that can really eat away at a client's confidence.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's not what we want either. Is like, and then that they're feeling like a failure. Like, oh, like I like didn't perform again this week. Like I didn't get it right. Like they might start out okay with that, but it will eat away at confidence over time.
Hmm. No, I fully agree. We'll get to the point where there's a very blunt conversation around, okay, we just got to hold a higher standard. We got to do better here. And then after that, if it like, okay, the next week there's not a clear, I don't feel good about there's a very clear action item we can address that I feel confident will improve things, then it's typically going to be, yes, we're going to simplify the plan or pull back. Like maybe we're not dieting as aggressively, or maybe we are actually just focusing on calories and protein or whatever it may be.
Or maybe we need to get out of the fat loss phase for right
Yeah, or
now.
maybe we're changing. Yeah, changing
Yeah.
phases. Any other thoughts on that one before we continue? I guess as we kind of wrap this up, adherence, like any common talking points, struggles, solutions that pop up to y'all want to address.
I mean, I kind of talked about the most common areas for people going off plan. I think that this could be a very like a whole topic in and of itself, but we talked about bites, licks, and taste quite a bit. I would also say emotional eating, social stuff, and just being hungry at lower food. which kind of ties in quite a bit with bites and tastes sometimes. But I depending on which one we're identifying, then there's like specific strategies that we can talk through with those. But like I said, that's like kind of like a whole topic on its own.
Yeah, this ended up being a little bit more mindset than I expected, but I think it'll be quite helpful. Um, Big picture, I think that for so many people, the social side of things, meals out are truly just the biggest obstacle. And again, I hate that because I love trying different restaurants and love meals out and all those things. But it really is like, unless we're going with extremely simple meals, like even if I have like a mashed potato alongside a steak, like, hey, do we consider the oil that the steak was cooked in, like the butter, like, or is there cheese in those mashed potatoes? Like, there's, again, unless we're going with an option that is extremely simple for us to track, and even then we would want to overestimate our calories a bit. That just is such a progress killer. And again, it's like a bummer, but it's as a coach, it doesn't do you any good to like just tiptoe around that because people just stay stuck and then you get frustrated because they don't understand why. For like almost everyone, that's huge. Especially again, if you are a very lean person trying to get leaner, I think we can all attest to this. Like if we're trying to get photo shoot lean, and again, like people hate, I think coaches don't like to talk about this because it's like less appealing or it's like, oh, well, I don't know, you're going to give people an eating disorder or something like that. Like that's your background. Please don't get ready for a photo shoot at the moment. But it's just the reality of like to get extremely lean. Like I think we can all agree, like photo shoot preps, Natalie, of course, in your contest prep now, like there's not really meals out for a stretch of time. At most, like, hey, it's again like the like maybe I'm gonna have like a steak, a shrimp, or a white fish without a side and ask like if I don't ask it's not cooked in butter or oil, I'm gonna make sure there's like no sauces and I'm gonna track at least like an extra tablespoon and a half of olive oil alongside it. That's just again the reality of it because it does like again, if you're like a coach yourself coaching less advanced clients, it's easy to feel like they could do this like 4 times a week and be fine. But the reality is like it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it does add up a lot more in this situation.
And that's where like no one's asking you to do a photo shoot. Like no one's
Correct.
asking you to do a contest prep. Like those levels of leanness require certain actions. And if you aren't willing to pay that price, then that goal isn't for you. But we need to find peace with that.
100% agree. Anything else from either of you before we wrap it up? Cool. I for sure think there's a lot of branch off topics that we could discuss, but I think big picture from like adherence and mental perspective, how kind of work around that and get to the bottom of the issue and just figure out do we actually need to adjust the plan or not? I think this is a very good way to approach it. I think we could have a whole nother conversation around, okay, this person is following the plan. What do I do next? But I think that's a different episode. Maybe our next one, we'll see. But let's wrap it up here for now. If you guys enjoy the show, do us a huge favor, leave us a 5-star rating and review. If you would like to apply for coaching, hit the link in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.